everybody, welcome back to the Sad Dad Games podcast. And this is another episode of Eric's Indie Corner. Super excited to be chatting with you today. Today I am going to be your host, Eric, and I'm saying today a lot. And today I'm your host, and today I have also with me today is...
And today I'm Shan.
Today Shan is Shan today, and today I am Eric today. All right, that's it for the episode today. We're going to talk to you next today and today. I don't know if this is a funny joke, so I might have milked it a little too much. It's bad.
I hated all of that.
You know what? Here, do you want to know the secret to comedy? You swing every single time, and you'll be funny about 60% of the time, and then you just have to live with the other 40%. And I do a scattershot approach to comedy. I just always make a joke and hope that it lands at least sometimes.
I like to just be so aware of when I'm whiffing it that you then just start like punching at yourself, like start self-deprecating as soon as humanly possible, and it starts recovering the joke because then everybody's already laughing at you on the inside, then they can just start laughing at you on the outside because we're all laughing at you.
You get those sweet pity laughs. Yeah, it's the best. So the point of the story is Shan and I are both very funny people, and if you're not laughing at us, then that's a you problem. We're objectively hilarious. All right. Well, anyways, back to the thing. We're going to be talking about an indie game today, of course, because this is an episode of Eric's Indie Corner. And this is an indie game. The one we're talking about today is one that Shan has been bugging me to play for a while. And it's been on my backlog for a while. And I finally got around to playing it. So we're going to talk about it. And the indie game is, drumroll, Tunic. We're going to be talking about Tunic today, which is... a very similar to like a Zelda style of game. So it's amazing that this, I didn't play this game sooner. So Tunic is, to kind of try to describe it, as it's an isometric puzzle adventure. And it's very much reminiscent of Zelda. The main character even wears a green tunic, much like how Link would wear a green tunic. And it was released in March 16th of 2022 for Max? For only Max. They released it to one person named Max, and he was the only one that got to play it. It was released on March 16th, 2022 for Mac, Windows, and Xbox consoles, and then released a year later, or a little bit later that year for PlayStation consoles and Switch. So, those of you who are new to the indie episodes here, we're going to talk about story, and then we're going to talk about gameplay, and then we're going to talk a little bit about visuals and sound. That's kind of how I like to break up these categories here. So first, we're talking about story, and this is one that I'm sure Shan and I will have lots to talk about because I feel like there's lots of story in Tunic, but I don't really know what's going on. It employs a very vague kind of storytelling similar to Dark Souls, where a lot of the story is told with the environment and is told through like, item descriptions and these pages of a manual that you find as you go throughout the world. And so it's a very vague story, but what is there and what I could glean was very enjoyable and well told. Shan, thoughts on the story?
Yeah, well, I can't relate through Dark Souls because I don't have the patience or the talent. I can relate to it through Hollow Knight, which is that it feels like that they just kind of scattered lore throughout the entire world, and something of a coherent tapestry of lore and world building just kind of emerged from it. Because from what I understand, that's how Hollow Knight's world building emerged. They didn't actually really plan it. They just placed things and then built dialogue around those things that they placed, and a world emerged from it, and it was full of life. And then where there were gaps, that's where fans would come in and they would fill in gaps with their own theories, and it became something of canon or fan canon that really engaged the community and made it so strong and lifted the game itself to such great heights. And I feel like that's something of what Tunic has accomplished with this game.
Yeah, I think that Hollow Knight is a good point of comparison because Hollow Knight has a very similar style of storytelling as Dark Souls does, as and same with Tunic. The slight differences I'd say is that Hollow Knight is even more deliberate with it's very vague with its story, but it is more deliberate than Tunic. Tunic gives you almost nothing. It's you really have to want to piece the story together. There is very little dialogue, and some of the dialogue is in like a not English, like it's a made up language. And then there are little words interspliced in with that, so you can get the vague gist of things, but there is no text box like full of item descriptions and things like that for you to really like read through and kind of soak up the lore. It is deliberately very vague, and it really nails this kind of grand atmosphere and sense of mystery, which is one of the things that I think Tunic does best. Is this is a great sense of mystery.
And call to adventure, which is the epicness that any great Zelda game really has, is the sense of scale and the heroic nature of the protagonist and the sense of duty that you have to go on a great adventure in a big world with unknown story and danger and heroic tales to conquer or enemies to defeat.
Yeah, I agree with that. Call to adventure, mystery, huge themes in Tunic, as well as in some of the like a lot of Zelda games, but specifically the older ones. The one that I can see the influence of a lot in this game is the very first Zelda game. So in Tunic, you kind of wake up on a shore of a mysterious island with lots of old technology, and you don't really know exactly what you're doing or why you're doing it, but you just kind of move forward and you do it and you solve puzzles and you unlock items, and as you go it starts to become more clear what your objectives are. And it felt a lot like playing the very first, like the 1986 Zelda game, the very first one, where you just plop down, the screen is black and then it like pans away and you're just in the middle of an area, and it's just like, all right, now just go do it. And you're like, what, go do what? And then there's just this complete sense of like, I have no idea what to do or why I'm here or why I'm doing it. But then a greater mystery and a greater adventure unfolds as you go along. So Tunic really scratched that itch for me that I got from the very first Zelda game as well, which, as a huge Zelda fan, you can see my Deku tree over there, very big Zelda fan. I really, really enjoyed that about the storytelling institute.
Yes, that's right. Ever since like a decade ago, I've always quibbled about this. I feel like I have been perfectly amazed by every Zelda game that has been released, but there's always been an emptiness that's been inside of me for something that has been left on the table, as Zelda has become an adventure game still, but has gone for more of an MSIM game and has left some of its roots behind to go more open world RPG style. So there's just a hollowness that I feel like we've never really figured out what a modern Zelda could be, where we have some more linearity, or it's not even that it needs linearity, it's just that I miss these chonky items and these lock and key puzzles that old classic Zelda games used to have. And I feel like you can still have exploration, you can still have these open concepts that modern games have, but you can still have these epic items that have this big purpose and that have discoverability about them that you can use in many different places with layers to them. But we've never seen that evolve to a modern formula, and this game seems to have figured it out.
Yes, this ties in really well to gameplay, which in Tunic I feel like story and gameplay merge together a lot more seamlessly than many other games do. So I agree with that. I think that the item progression and the progression in general in Tunic is really, really finely tuned. because it is such a mysterious game and a game that doesn't hold your hand at all. It almost never tells you explicitly what to do, but it gives you just enough tools for you to figure out on your own what to do, which is, in my opinion, the hallmark of of excellent puzzle design. I love playing puzzle games, and when you figure out a puzzle and you're like, oh my gosh, and it just clicks and you feel so smart. And I had dozens of moments, maybe not dozens, but I had almost like a steady stream of moments like that in Tunic, where like something would click, or I would find an item and then I'd be like, oh, now I know how to do this. And it's hard to explain without spoiling it. Tunic is such a great experience that I don't want to give specific examples, because I think that you should play it and experience it. So much of the fun of Tunic is unraveling the mystery for yourself. It unfolds so organically. And I guess I'll speak to one of the ways that it does that. So one of the interesting things that I think Tunic does from a gameplay perspective and from a narrative perspective is that there is an in-game instruction manual. You know how like in older video games, for those of us who are old like Shan and I, you remember in older video games where you'd get a little instruction booklet that it would have like lists of all of the enemy types and, you know, the different areas you'd go to, and like it was like a little book basically. I mean, they were like 30 to 50 pages long. They were like a little book with all the information, like the controls and stuff, how to play the game. And so in Tunic, they have one of those, but it's in the game, but you start off with 0 pages of this instruction booklet. And then as you progress and as you play, you find these pages within the world, and then you get a little bit more instruction and on like how certain mechanics work, or how items can play together, or how different items can interact with the environment. And I thought that was so incredibly clever, especially because a lot of the instruction booklet is in this fictional language. It's not in English. And so there are a couple little snippets and words that are in English so that you can get the gist, but most of it is in a fictional language. And so you have to really look through it and intuit on your own what those pages mean and what they're trying to tell you. And it's incredibly fulfilling puzzle design to just look, to get new pages and look through that booklet and try to figure things out on your own. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, for all of you like younger millennial and below, these instruction manuals that came with like the NES system, if you think playing those old games are beyond frustrating, it's because they had a limited tile set and they didn't really understand game UI UX design, and they just didn't literally,
because it was a new media. It was a new medium. They were learning all of like how to teach players things. And originally it was like through an instruction booklet, because they had a limited assets to code it into the game. So
yeah. And you get into like playing Zelda and you're like, there's literally no way I could possibly know I'm supposed to burn that random bush in this screen.
The go-to example, the random bush, where the rest of the plot hides. Yeah.
Well, that, or playing Metroid and you're like, how was I supposed to know I'm supposed to bomb that random square on this tile that looks exactly like every other tile in the entire game?
I had a funny idea for a comic strip that I haven't figured out how to illustrate yet, but it's that bush from Zelda, or like one of the random tiles from Metroid, and it's just got like a box that says the rest of the gameplay with like a knife up to his throat. It's like I'm going to hold the rest of the game hostage and you've got to find me. Like I'm one tiny tile in a gigantic game, and behind me lies the rest of the game, and you'll never know. You got to find me.
Yeah. So these games, you needed to have the manuals. You literally couldn't play them without these manuals, because they would give you information that you needed to finish the games. You see how beautiful that is? I forgot I had these right at my hands.
So cool. Yeah.
You see how beautiful that is?
I think most people are watch on YouTube, but for those of you who are just listening, Shan's holding up a manual from the Japanese release of the Legend of Zelda for Famicom. So cool.
See that? That's
for Metroid 1. It's so cool. I miss those days.
I went to Tokyo and Kyoto, and I like scoured these game shops, and I bought the original Famicom games, Metroid and Zelda no Densetsu wa or something like that.
Ooh,
Something
I
like
feel so
that.
cultured all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. These are gorgeous.
They really are. So Tunic does a great job and of kind of making you feel like, at least for people of a similar age to Shan and I, making you feel like a kid again when you're playing your NES game and you've got the manual out in front of you and you're like taking notes and you're looking at the manual to be like, what does this enemy do? What do I do here? And it does a great job of that. But it also, because the pages are found within the world, it can gate certain information until you reach certain areas. So the manual kind of unfolds and expands as you go along. And it's very clever. There was one moment kind of like near the first half of the game where I learned something in the manual and I was like, oh my gosh, I that's something that I could have been doing all along. And it was a puzzle that I thought I couldn't solve yet. And I could have solved it right at the very beginning of the game if I understood how to do the thing that it was asking me to. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because you should just play the game. But I was so completely just, I loved that I had the skills within me to solve that puzzle that had me stumped. I just didn't have the information to know how to utilize those skills. And I thought that was such a cool way to gate the player, is through not just like, here's an item, now you can go to this area. It was like, oh, you've had this all along, you just didn't know how to use it. And now you found this page and now you know how to use it. And it's like, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, we're borking your like entire formula for like how we're going to talk about this, but like similar to that and mechanics of the game, but also like with isometric camera angle, they withhold like information on how you can navigate the map just with the camera angle. So similar to just withholding information from you with the instruction manual in plain sight, they also withhold information with camera angles. So at the beginning of the game, you could probably speed run through most of the game. I would love to watch a speed run of this game and see how fast you could play it. But like, if you finish the game, you could probably replay it and have most of the information right at your fingertips because you actually you know most of it. And it's only through like actual deduction and puzzle solving that you uncover what you already have. And it's just amazing puzzle creation. I love this creator.
I like the idea of uncovering what you already have. I think that's like a theme that kind of runs throughout Tunic. Like Shan said, because of how the camera angle is, there was multiple times where I'd go through like a long dungeon or a pathway or something, and then I'd come back up towards the end and I'd pop up like right next to a different landmark that I recognized. But because the camera had obscured it, I didn't realize that there was an entrance there, and it wasn't blocked. It wasn't like I needed a key to get in from that way. It was just, there was like a tree in the way, or there was like, it was just around the corner and I couldn't see it or something. And it trusted the player enough so that you would remember later to be like, oh yeah, that's how I get back into that place. It didn't mark it on your map. And I think that this game does an exceptional job of trusting the player's intelligence and letting you solve things on your own. And it never tells you the answers to anything. It gives you the tools to figure things out and lets you figure them out for yourself, which makes for much more fulfilling puzzle design. So top notch, really love it.
This game just puts so much wonder and mystery and Easter eggs, more so than I've felt in any Zelda game in like 15 years. I was constantly full of wonder and mystery and awe, and I was always, every like 5 to 10 minutes, I was being delighted by discovery. And that is what I had been missing in Zelda for so long.
Yeah, it's a game of just almost constant discovery. And there was only a couple of times where I really sat down and I was like, I have no idea what to do. But if you explore the world with your new set of knowledge and your new set of tools, you usually can find what comes next, even if the game doesn't tell you anything. And so I'm gonna make a little bit of a comparison that Shan might not like, but because I know that Shan really likes this game, but I feel like two games that employ this kind of heavy trust in the player and but and letting them kind of explore the world in their own way and figure things out on their own is this game Tunic, and then another game Outer Wilds. And I before the internet gets mad at me, I understand the appeal of Outer Wilds. I totally get why it's super popular and why everybody likes it. I didn't particularly care for it, but I think it's a good game that was well designed. It just wasn't really my jam.
Have fun being canceled.
Yeah, have fun being Eric doesn't like Outer Wilds, and which I didn't. I didn't like Outer Wilds. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it, and I'll tell you why.
He also hates puppies.
I hate puppies. I punch them right in the face. But the reason I bring this up is because Tunic and Outer Wilds both employ this same sense of mystery and this big world, and they just kind of go like, all right, now go figure it out. But one of the areas where I feel like Tunic succeeds for me, where Outer Wilds did not, is I never felt like I was solving any mysteries in Outer Wilds. I would wander around and then I would find like a diary entry that would just say, all right, now that you found this, here's the solution to the puzzle on the other planet. You just do this exact thing. And that really irked me because I was like, I really wanted to solve that puzzle. It didn't make me feel like I was solving anything. It made me feel like I was being strung along between journal entries about just like, once you find this, now you do this. Once you find that, now you do that. And for me, I didn't find that as a super fulfilling gameplay loop. But I feel like how Tunic really succeeded for me in that way is that it gave me those breadcrumbs, but it never told me, all right, now go here and do this. It gave you the breadcrumbs, usually in the form of a page from the manual, and then I'd have to go and look in the manual, and oftentimes I'd have to look at multiple pages that I had previously and compare them and like look at the environment, and then I could deduce on my own, be like, oh, I bet this is what I'm supposed to do next, or oh, I think I could use this item in this way. And so I found that as a much more fulfilling gameplay loop because I felt like I was in control of the pace of discovery and the things that I was discovering. So Outer Wilds is a garbage butt game, and so is everyone who likes it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's not. It's a good game that just wasn't exactly my jam. But I think that Tunic succeeded where that failed for me.
Well, where I had problems with Outer Wilds is I think the discovery curve and like the feedback loop to giving positive feedback to the player is way too steep. Like enjoying the game is like nearly flat for like 5-6 hours and then just like start skyrocketing all of a sudden. And
yeah,
so, like,
I wandered around forever.
I was miserable. I was like, I'm getting nothing from this game, and I'm just doing this for my friend who told me I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm miserable. Oh, I kind of get it, and then I just had a fantastic time. So like, I had to suffer to enjoy it, and then I really did.
See, it never clicked for me, and I beat Outer. Well, no, I didn't beat Outer Wilds. I got very very close to the end. I had like one puzzle left to solve. I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't played it, but Shan knows there's like the one area where you have to go in the end where there's all of you know what I mean? Like at the very end where you have to maneuver and it's where you have the last puzzle and you have to maneuver and it's difficult. I got there and I died like 8 times in a row and I was like, screw it. I'm not having a good time. And so I
didn't think the last puzzle was super well designed.
Yeah, and I
into it, but
yeah, and I wasn't super into it up to that point either. Like I said, not a terrible game, just didn't really click with me. But Tunic super does. You should totally play Tunic.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't mention just the basic big aspect of the gameplay as well as the combat. The combat is probably less important to me than the sense of discovery and wonder that the world instills, but the combat is still very good. It has kind of a mix between like a top-down Zelda and Dark Souls kind of a style for me. You can block and parry and dodge roll and attack with your sword, and then you get other items that you find as you go along, similar to how you would in a Zelda game that you can also use in combat. But it's also tough as nails. It is not easy. Particularly the boss fights are really, they can get on top of you if you're not careful. So I enjoyed the challenge level in that, and the combat was a really good time in this game as well.
I think the combat checks the box of existing half the time, more than half the time. I think the boss battles are where it fulfills its promise of being rewarding, but everything else in between is just like, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the smaller enemy encounters have like kind of a take it or leave it attitude. There are some that are a little more interesting that you might have to like parry an attack or roll behind them or something. But for the most part, enemies are in the overworld feel a little bit more just like obstacles, which is kind of how they are in like top-down Zelda games anyways. Which is something that I kind of enjoy, even though I know that it's my monkey brain just like, I like slashing things, but
It's like I with with no compunction, I just took that difficulty down to an easy and I
yeah.
said, "Give me my delightful puzzle solving. That's the only reason I'm here."
Listen, I am a firm believer and a preacher in like play the game on whatever difficulty you are having the best time. If you like super hard games and you want to have everything be a bullet sponge and that's super fun for you, then crank up that difficulty. If you're here for the story and you just want to breeze through it, like turn down the difficulty. And anyone who calls you a scrub or tells you to get good or tells you that you're not a real gamer because you're playing on easy, screw those people. Play on easy. If it's more fun for you, then play on easy. I played on easy too. I played Tunic on easy for about half of the game because I just was in same for the same reason. I just wanted to soak in that story and the atmosphere, and I wanted to just have a little bit of an easier time with the combat.
Well, we also we had a consensus that like the combat cycle, like the fight cycle is a little too long and you can't cancel it. And so like the enemies could get the advantage on you way too easily. And so it just kind of like the negative feedback loop was too strong when I more brutal than I was willing to take when I wanted to have fun.
Yes, because your character is so small on screen, when you begin your like attack animation, it has to carry all the way through before you can dodge. And so once you've hit that attack button, you're committed for the rest of that animation. And because the enemies are fairly fast and can hit pretty hard, it's frustrating when you're trying to dodge, but your character is still finishing their attack animation. And especially since the character is so small on screen, it can be hard to read exactly what's happening. And so I think that a small tweak that could have been made to improve the combat would be to allow you to cancel the attack animation to dodge roll, and that would have solved a lot of little problems for me with the combat.
Basically all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but on the whole, combat really solid. Boss battles particularly solid. Really enjoyable.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful design on the bosses. But yeah, taking it down to an easy felt like this same balance I get in a normal game. So it actually just felt like it was over difficult on the normal setting.
Yeah, the normal setting has and this is a comparison that everyone makes, but it was like a similar to a Dark Souls-ish kind of level. Maybe not quite as tough as Dark Souls in some areas, but kind of on that level. Because the combat is so similar, I think that that's a fair comparison. All right, moving on to visuals and sound. Visuals and sound are, as always, really excellent. Tunic in particular was one where the visuals I found really striking. It has a visual style with lots of really simple geometry, lots of hard edges and triangles and squares and stuff like that. But they use a really bright color palette, really colorful characters, and absolutely drop dead gorgeous lighting. The lighting effects in this game just had my jaw on the floor, and they might not have been as like technically proficient as like ray traced shadows and it wasn't really like technically complex, but it was artistically really successful for me. The lighting in this game, I really sold the visual style for me.
Yeah, the lighting was probably the best feature. I thought maybe the color palette was oversaturated. You could have maybe taken down the hue or the saturation on the background colors or on the
To make your
scenery.
character pop a little more.
Exactly, like just to let the character and the enemies pop, and just to like let the things that you want to call out stand out better. Just like it was a little overwhelming on my senses to have everything be so incredibly vibrant. Or maybe my TV was oversaturated. I don't know. It was just the only game that made me feel that overwhelmed.
Sounds like a problem with your TV, Shan. No, but I mean the game is very saturated. It's a very, very bold colors games, and the parts where you're like maybe in a dark cavern with, you know, skeletal enemies, it made the like that part feel particularly dour or something. Like when the color was taken away, it felt like a different game almost, or it was like immediately sold this different atmosphere of spookiness kind of a thing. But yeah, the game as a whole is pretty saturated. I wouldn't say that I noticed it to a degree that it was like I felt like it was too much, but I also wasn't paying attention to the color saturation. I just was smitten by the lighting and the adorable character models, and yeah.
I intend to replay it on OLED. I think that would solve a lot of my problems.
Yeah. Gotta love those OLED displays. So yeah, visual is really great. It's like almost no complaints. I played it on PS5 and I had, you know, rock solid frame rates, beautiful crisp image, no issues there. It was a really visually nice game to play on a nice big screen. And also the sound is great. I feel like sound effects are all really crunchy. There's this kind of ancient technology in this kind of a wildish world, and so there's a lot of really great like bassy electric sounds with some of the enemies and environments that I thought was really cool. The music is a lot of really kind of mellow synth vibes as you're exploring, that just kind of gets you into a zen, like, yeah, I'm exploring the world and having a great time. And then when a boss battle comes along, it comes in with these bombastic soundtracks that get your blood pumping and really make the boss battles feel that extra level of epic and grandiose kind of a situation going on. So music, top notch, really enjoyed it. I'm sure that this will be one that get your bingo cards out. I'm sure that this will be one where I like to pop in my headphones and listen to it while I work. I love me some indie game soundtracks.
I love the soundtrack throughout the entire game, but I think the general overworld, like the primary soundtrack, it got a little tiring, and I think I was unsure of like the tonally, like I expected more of like you know, Zelda, like, you know, I wanted like a quality adventure.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like the expectation was there, and since I didn't get it for Tears of the Kingdom, it's like, give me adventure music, give me a hero soundtrack.
I want an overworld theme that makes me feel like I'm on a Zelda adventure. Exactly. Yeah, so you don't really get that with Tunic to the same level. Yeah.
They subverted expectations. They did something bold and original. I still give them plaudits for that. And so it was an artistic choice, and I do think that it was copacetic with like their isometric geometric design. So it works. It's just like I got a little tired with the general tone of the overworld soundtrack myself, but I loved it in like their soundtrack choices for everything else. It works.
Yeah, the boss battle music in particular, every boss that you face, whenever it started, I was like, again, comparing to Hollow Knight is another game with excellent music, and whenever you face a new boss and the boss music starts, it's always like, yeah, like it just gets you pumped. Exactly. And the boss battle music in this game is top notch.
It's so great.
So great. Fantastic. All right. Well, I have another little fun fact that I wanted to share about Tunic as I was doing my research. So I found out today that Tunic started off as like a solo developed project. It was made initially by one person named Andrew Sholdes. And he was later joined on by several other people. I think it ended up being a team of like 10 or 12-ish people that made the game, which is still not a super big team for a game like this. So, you know, kudos to those guys. Really, really great stuff. But he was, and I touched on this earlier, but he was really inspired by the vagueness of old school video games, and cited in particular the very first 1986 The Legend of Zelda game as a big inspiration. And he just was saying that he remembered, marking down in his game manual and reading that manual and trying to figure out what, to do next. And he thought that would be a really cool game mechanic to include in a game, where he's like, well, what if the gameplay, like the game manual, was something that came in the game and was essential to figuring out the puzzles of the game and understanding the world of the game. And so it's a unique concept and something that I can't think of having seen in a game before. And so cool idea from him that I found really enjoyable. Yeah, I think that just about does it for me. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up here, Shan?
I would give this a perfect score. Anything that I would give it an 8 or a 9 out of 10 is completely eclipsed by the 10s or 11s out of 10, right? Like, the composite score is that it's a perfect indie game because of what it does best is enough to make it perfectly worth playing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Can't recommend it highly enough. I had a really great time with this. Can't believe it took me so long to sit down and play it. But yeah, really, really good stuff. So Tunic, the playtime, it'll run you between probably 12 to 16 hours, probably a lot more if you are a completionist and want to solve all the puzzles. There's a lot of really vague, difficult puzzles for, extra things to get different endings for the games. And so if you want to go chase after all that, I'm sure that you could squeeze lots of extra time out of this game.
Don't go chasing waterfalls, though.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
No. So I have just learned about this genre. It's called Metroidvanias. This more applies to Animal Well and the like, but the concept is similar in that it's games whose puzzles are so difficult that you're supposed to solve them with a community outside of the game, and I don't approve. I don't approve of this.
So the core gameplay experience, where you can kind of figure out things on your own, gets the Shan stamp of approval. And I agree 100%. To that to a degree, where especially because if like me, you're playing this game, several years after it's come out, it's not really in the popular zeitgeist. It's hard to just hop online and have conversations with people about what did you do here? What did you do there? Kind of like the old schoolyard, did you know you could find a Mew under the truck of the blah, blah, blah. I think that's what it's going for. But if you, yeah. But if you don't play it right at launch, you don't really get that. So it's
or if you're a sad dad and you don't,
or if you're a sad dad and you don't have dozens of hours to just play one game,
But that's exactly right. So this game has 90% plus solvable puzzles where most of them you could solve on your own, and then there's a 10% amount of puzzles that okay, you're gonna sit in this room for a while, but you can still solve them and you will be very satisfied and you'll be very proud of yourself. I still love those puzzles. I'm very proud of myself if I solve them. And so there is a spectrum for every type of puzzler. And then there's that 5 to 10% of puzzles where you have to go outside of the game, you have to create a community, and it'll take 10 of you 5-10 hours each of just constantly pulling each little piece of information you can and trying, brute forcing these puzzles to try to scrap together an answer and failing 100 times, or you can go on 5 years later and just look up the answer and then plug it in. I hate that.
Yeah.
That is not satisfying. That is not a good puzzle. That's not fun.
Yes. I would say that I'd agree with that. I like puzzles that make me feel smart, and puzzles like that don't make me feel smart. So, and I think that what they were going for was I think that's probably what they were going for. Those
They
extra
wanted
like
community
5% of
engagement.
puzzles. They wanted community engagement. So if that's your jam, I think that's great. But I'd agree with Shan that I find that a little frustrating. But I also don't anticipate 100%ing this game because
But
I'm a busy guy.
I want to 100% complete, and I want to feel smart for doing it.
Yeah. And it's a tough one to do that with unless you've got that community.
But see, also the problem is because I don't know which puzzles are that 5% beyond difficult and which ones are the 10% I could solve, I can't discriminate between them. So I think maybe I'll just discard those 15% puzzles because I don't know which ones I can solve. And that just like leaves a lot on the table when I could be having more fun with this game. So like that's kind of the problem. This game is so great. I want to have more fun with it, but some puzzles are so difficult, it's discouraging me from having more fun with it.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. So
it's still perfect though. So
but on the whole, Tunic gets a solid recommend from both of us. You know, no game is perfect. It's got a couple of little things that it's like, I wish that I could engage with it a little bit more with a little bit less friction. But solid recommend. It's a really fantastic game. Super enjoyed basically all of my time with it. Really scratches that itch for discovery and adventure and storytelling. Just a great game all around. So you can find Tunic on Mac OS. Oh my gosh, I did it again. I can talk. You can find Tunic on Mac OS, Windows, Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series consoles, and it retails for $29.99. So a little more on the pricey side, but a little more of a high effort game. So I think worth it. But
there was a physical distribution, so I got my physical copy so I can share with my sister. Always go physical if you can, so you can share.
Shan is a big fan of physical media. I am too. Like obviously physical media whenever possible, but Shan is like he is a huge supporter of physical media, which is great because we need more of that.
If you give up your rights and you let the publishers win, then we never get this back. We never get back ownership. Do you really want to cede control and ownership to the publishers so that they can just control prices forever? Yeah, we get sales right now, but in the future when they have full ownership, they won't be so generous. Do you want to give that up? Okay, that's a diatribe for another day.
I was going to say, next episode we'll just unmute the Shan and let him go off for 30 minutes on publishers and video games and ownership. We'll just let him go, turn him loose.
There you go.
All right, but that's it for today's episode, you guys. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Had a really great time talking about Tunic today. Remember that you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and here on YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well if you'd like short videos. Be sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss out on any of our new episodes. New episodes of our regular series drop every Monday, and new episodes of Eric's Indie Corner drop every Thursday. Leave us a comment, comment, subscribe. I feel so gross every time I say that, but comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. If there are any inaccuracies or if I said something wrong, let me know. If there's anything that you like, tell me about your favorite indie game. What do you love about Tunic? I'd love to chat about it in the comics. Wow, I can't talk today. Leave a comment, and subscribe.
I hope that was
all right,
as
everybody.
painful for you as it was for me.
That was bad. That was I'm gonna get better at this maybe.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye everybody.
Outro. Bleepy doof, bleepity bloopity blow.